They say some nights change the course of a lifetime, and for one old man, a quiet rancher who carried the wrinkles of sorrow on his face, that night began under the dim glow of lanterns at a roadside auction. The crowd roared with laughter and cruel bids. Two young women stood trembling on a wooden platform, their hands bound, their eyes filled with fear. They were beautiful, not just in their appearance, but in the fragile dignity they tried to hold against humiliation. The old man leaned on his cane, watching the scene unfold. His heart ached. He wasn't wealthy, but he had worked the land his whole life and saved every penny. To him, these weren't prizes to be sold, they were human souls. And so, against the sneers of younger men, he raised his hand. His voice cracked but steady, "I'll take them both." The crowd jeered. "Old fool, what will you do with them?" But he said nothing more. He paid the price and led the women away, gently untying their hands. His voice was soft, like a grandfather's lullaby. "You're free now, no one owns you." The women wept. They had expected cruelty. Instead, they found kindness. That night, the old man brought them to his humble ranch. He cooked stew, gave them blankets, and let them sleep in his own warm bed while he rested by the fire on the floor. For the first time in months, the women slept without fear. But destiny often has surprises. In the silence of midnight, one of the women rose and walked to the fire. She saw the old man shivering under his thin coat. She whispered to her sister, and the two of them carried the blanket from the bed and draped it over him. The old man stirred awake, startled, but their eyes met, and in that moment, something wordless passed between them. Gratitude, safety, belonging. Days turned into weeks. The women, though once broken, began to laugh again. They planted flowers around the porch. They cooked meals, sang songs, and filled the empty ranch with warmth. The old man never asked for anything in return. To him, kindness was never a bargain. It was simply the right thing to do. And yet, love has a way of writing its own chapters. One evening, as a storm raged outside, the three of them sat by the fire. Lightning lit up the room, and thunder rolled like drums of fate. The younger woman placed her hand on the old man's shoulder. "Why did you save us?" she asked softly. The old man stared into the flames. His voice was heavy with memories. "Because once, long ago, I had a daughter. She was taken from me. I could not save her. But maybe tonight, I could save someone else's daughters." The women's eyes filled with tears. In that moment, he was no longer a stranger, he was family. That night, they didn't see him as just an old man, but as the heart that gave them back their lives. They chose to stay, not out of debt or fear, but out of love. What began as rescue became companionship, and what began as sorrow grew into unexpected joy. The old man had set them free, but freedom led them back to him. Years later, neighbors would whisper about the ranch where laughter never faded. They said the old man, once alone, was now cared for by two women who adored him until his final breath. Not as captives. Not as strangers. But as chosen family, proof that kindness, when given without expectation, returns in ways we cannot imagine. And so the story leaves us with a truth. Sometimes, the smallest act of compassion can change not only another's destiny, but your own. Because love, in its purest form, is never bought, it is given, and then, returned. The night was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into the bones. Lanterns swung in the wind at the edge of a dusty road, where a crowd gathered for a cruel spectacle. On a makeshift wooden stage stood two young women, their wrists tied, their faces pale with fear. The auctioneer's voice cracked through the night. "Two beauties tonight, strong, healthy, and obedient. Who will start the bidding?" The men in the crowd laughed, shouted numbers, and threw insults. For them, the women were nothing more than prizes. But at the back of the gathering, leaning on his cane, stood an old rancher. His face was lined with sorrow, his clothes worn, but his eyes still carried a quiet fire. He had buried his wife many years ago, and the silence of his ranch had since become unbearable. But what pained him most was the memory of a daughter he had lost long ago. A girl taken by raiders, never to be seen again. Watching the two trembling women on the stage brought back that grief like a knife to his chest. The bids rose higher, the crowd grew rowdier. Finally, the old man's voice cut through the noise. "I'll take them both." Laughter erupted. "You?" One man scoffed. "What will an old fool like you do with two young women?" The old man said nothing more. He pulled a pouch of coins from his coat, the savings of a lifetime, and placed it in the auctioneer's hand. The crowd went silent. No one bid higher. The gavel fell. The women looked at each other in shock as the man led them down from the stage. They expected chains, cruelty, perhaps worse. Instead, he gently untied their hands. His voice was soft, almost like a grandfather's. "You're free now. No one owns you." Tears welled in their eyes. For the first time in months, someone had spoken to them not as property, but as people. That night, he brought them to his ranch. It was small, weathered by time, but it had warmth. He cooked them a simple stew, gave them bread, and handed them blankets. When they tried to thank him, he only smiled. "Rest now. You've suffered enough." The old man gave them his bed, choosing instead to sleep by the fire on the floor. The women lay awake for a long time, whispering to each other. "Why would he do this for us?" one asked. The other shook her head. Maybe kindness still exists. At midnight, one of them rose and walked to the fireplace. She saw the old man shivering under his thin coat. Quietly, she called her sister. Together, they carried their blanket and placed it over him. He stirred awake, startled, but when their eyes met, there was no fear, only gratitude. The days that followed brought slow healing. The women helped in the kitchen, swept the porch, and sang softly as they worked. The old man showed them how to feed the chickens, how to mend fences, and how to plant vegetables. At first, they worked in silence, still guarded. But soon, laughter began to return to the ranch. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, they sat together by the fire. The younger woman finally asked, "Why did you save us?" The old man looked into the flames for a long moment before speaking. His voice was heavy, filled with memories. "Many years ago, I had a daughter. She was taken from me, and I could not save her. When I saw you both, I thought, maybe this time, I could make a difference." The women's eyes filled with tears. To them, he was no longer just a rescuer, he was family. That night, as thunder rolled outside and rain battered the roof, the three of them sat close by the fire. It wasn't the warmth of the flames that comforted them, but the warmth of belonging. What had begun as rescue was becoming something greater. Love, chosen freely, not forced. The townsfolk whispered about it. "The old man has taken two young women into his home." Some mocked him, others called him foolish. But those who passed by his ranch would often hear laughter ringing through the fields, see flowers blooming along the porch, and smell the scent of fresh bread drifting from the windows. Years later, when the old man grew frail and illness came, the two women never left his side. They cared for him tenderly, the way daughters care for a father, and the way companions care for the one who gave them hope. On his final night, as he lay in bed, he whispered with a weak smile, "I thought I saved you, but it was you who saved me." The women wept, holding his hands until his last breath. And though the world outside never truly understood, those who knew the ranch remembered it not as a place of sorrow, but of laughter, love, and second chances. Because kindness, once given without expectation, always returns in ways we cannot imagine. And love, true love, is never bought. It is given, and then, freely returned.